He's so multi-talented. It must be. It's Wednesday. It must be the concerto.
You asked about the instrument. So this is the mandolin. This is a vintage 1912 Gibson F2. There's probably about maybe 10 of these in the United States. This is before they changed the logo from the Gibson to Gibson, which they did in 1933.
Cool.
These tuners have inlaid with copper and brass. They stopped making those in 1918
because of the conductivity.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so this is the 1912.
Wow, well, so cool.
I had to trick my wife into letting me get
it. How many kids you got?
I have well, it's a funny you should ask.
You trick your wife into a lot of things because how many kids you got?
Six. We have 6 kids.
All right, there you go.
3 boys and 3 girls.
I'm gonna let that rest right there.
You know, they're really fun to make. What are you supposed to do?
You have a silver tongue, my friend. Obviously. All right, hey everybody, it's Whiskey Wednesday.
Hey, it's Whiskey Wednesday. Here.
My good friend Joe Swanson's here. That means we're gonna drink some scotch.
That's right.
Some single malt, some independent bottlings.
It's really good to be here, guys. Yeah, this is great. It's great to see everybody. Ryan, great to be here.
Thank you.
Always good to be at Julio's. You guys are an outpost, a beacon of light amongst dark beverages.
There you go. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate the kind words.
Yeah.
But enough of that.
Our first whiskey.
Let's get to the whiskey. All right.
So we'll start with the first one.
That usually makes sense. Let's start with the last one.
Those who know me, I'm not above starting in the middle and working my way out. But we're going to start with the first one. So the first one is
before you get started, I just want to explain. So we're doing Gordon MacPhail tonight, but we're all doing Benromach too, which is owned by Gordon MacPhail.
Yes.
All right. So I don't want anybody to get confused. They actually own a distillery. For those who don't know that.
Yeah, they own 2 distilleries now. Actually.
Right.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit over the course of the whiskeys tonight. We'll talk a little bit about how they're leaning into their ownership of Benromach and the Cairn distillery. We can talk a little bit about their pivot away from their traditional business of getting new make fillings from distilleries across Scotland, about the why of that, about the how will impact us, and about some of the good, and there's good and bad about that as well. So we'll have an opportunity to address that. But first,
and the big thing is that you're going to have your own whiskey, which is the first one we're doing. Not to be no, just teasing.
So the first whiskey is one of 2 whiskeys that we're going to try for the Discovery series from Gordon MacPhail, which are kind of their entry level. Is a little bit, that's not exactly what we're trying to say. They really put cask influence on display, and that's what they're really trying to do. So these are great whiskeys for if you're trying to unpack and really see laid bare the difference between ex-bourbon maturation and ex-sherry maturation, which we're going to see in the first 2 whiskeys. So the first one is a 10-year-old Glen Grant.
Yeah. And Gordon MacPhail's been pivotal since the get-go of how long has Gordon MacPhail been in business?
Since 1824.
Yeah. So
11
years old.
11 years old. It's like my kids. I can't ever remember how old they are.
How many and how
I know their names. Even if you change the order, I could still get the names right.
That's because you say them all. Every time you call one, it's all the names.
I went to school to pick one of them up. This was a while ago. And they go to the admin and she says, "Oh, so you're so-and-so's father." I don't remember what kid it was. It was one of them. And she says,
"Are you sure it was one of yours?"
She says to me, "So what's the teacher's name?" And I was like, I really don't really. She's like, "You don't know that your I think it was my son Cormac. You don't know his teacher's name." Luckily, one of the student aides knew me outside of the school universe, and she came into the room just as I was being chastised by the admin who didn't know who I was. So I'm kind of a big deal. And this admin said, she put her arm around me and she said, "This poor man I'm not surprised he has no idea who his son's teacher is. Do you know how many children he has?
Let's get his own baseball team.
That's right. So this
That
is
sounds
the
great.
11-year-old Glen Grant. So yes, Glen Grant, Gordon MacPhail has been pivotal in Glen Grant. They
Yeah.
were the official licensed bottler of Glen Grant single malt for a long time.
They had some of
were-
the original labels too.
Yeah, they were the developers of the original label, which was actually done in the original artwork was done in pencil. If you ever see it, those are some really lovely whiskeys. Sold in the Glen Grant Visitor Center for many years. I don't know if they still are, but they were. Gordon MacPhail was a real pioneer in planting a flag in the ground, saying that this distillate, which now is an ingredient in blended whiskeys, is good enough and fine enough and elite enough to be a finished product of its own right. And so they started to procure new make fillings from Glen Grant, mature them to be released as single malt. And I think it's also worth noting as we think about the context here. Gordon MacPhail started in 1895. And they started as a blender, as a bottler, as a sherry merchant. They dealt with, groceries, things like that. And parts of their business started to take off and parts of their business got phased out over the years. They weren't always pioneers in the retention of new make fillings to be released as single malt. That was really something that George Urquhart pioneered, who is the grandfather of the current generation that's in charge right now. So they weren't, we don't want to overblow it and say that when they opened in 1895, they were taking whiskey and saying, we're going to make single malt. That's not exactly what was happening. They were blenders like everybody else. When George Urquhart came on the scene, he was the one that really decided that that was the direction the company was going to take. At that time, it was widely seen as lunacy to be taking this commodity that was ready to be sold off to blenders and monetized and just sit on it like an egg that you hoped was going to hatch someday. And he was seen as really ahead of his time. He was seen as really foolhardy.
A lunatic at the time.
Yeah. So,
I can say that.
I don't want to point fingers,
because it's a crazy idea.
Yeah.
I mean, really is a crazy idea because this is how money is made. This is this is what you do to make money. And you say, like, you're turning it on its head. There's no real going. Single malts are the thing. Single malts weren't the thing.
Yes.
At all. And I'll say it, if you won't say it, Gordon MacPhail was actually in many ways responsible for the emergence of single malts.
It's true.
At a time when no one was really looking at it. Yes, we can talk about Diageo's, the classic malts, and they had too much whiskey. How else can we market them? They sort of look, in a lot of ways, you can say they sort of looked at what Gordon MacPhail was doing.
That's a good point,
and
Ryan.
Saying, well, if they're doing it, we can do it on a bigger scale. Let's us do it.
It's true. And I think that those large firms like Diageo, they are
seldom have an idea of their own.
They're not. We wouldn't put them as captains of innovation.
Right.
So they're often
captains of industry, but not of innovation. Yeah.
Do you know what Diageo stands for?
No.
Death Star is a giant export organization.
All right. So if we're going to get into that, that we visited Rose Isle.
Yes.
So Rose Isle, for those of you who don't know, very few people get to visit this place because it is technically the Death Star.
It has the allure of a prison.
We made T-shirts that looked like Star Wars that said Rose Isle. All right.
Never did a name so poorly fit the facility.
Yes. And the funny part about it was, for those of you who don't know, the stills had basically interchangeable yard arms, so you could control the type of distillate you made at one facility.
Yeah.
So that they could refit all of them depending on what angle they wanted and what they wanted to replicate. The idea is, well, why are we having Lagavulin make spirit that Lagavulin's taken off as a single malt? Let them make as much as they can to make the single malt, and that whatever we need to blend for Lagavulin, we'll just make it here, and then we'll use that stuff instead of using the stuff at Lagavulin, and we can still make our blends and do all the different stuff we make at blends. And like this week or this month, we're making Lagavulin. This month we're making Bourbon. This month we're making
Exactly.
Kalila, whatever it needed to be.
And that's, and I think a few years back, I saw that the annual production at Kalila had actually gone down, and that could be cause for alarm, except that it coincided with the rise in production at Rosile.
Right.
So really what they're doing at Rosile is they just dial it in, they make whatever kind of malt ingredient they want to go into the giant blends that are taking over the world. And that way Kalila and Lagavulin and other kind
Could
of
make what
key
they need.
distilleries can lean into being more Kalila. And the upshot of that is that it allows for more careful is probably too qualitative of a word, but it leads to more a return to older production practices because the schedule isn't as
Right.
compressed
They don't
by
have
the
to make
industrial
what they
need
need.
for the distillate.
Yeah, they don't have
So
to.
you can have slower fermentations and things
But it
like
also
that.
was the idea is that it would also lead to other innovations coming from the distilleries,
Potentially, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Potentially, and not while they're owned by Diageo, but eventually, this was what it would do.
Yeah, so and I think and that's a good point. And when we look, what does innovation at distilleries mean in Scotland? As far as the giant mega distilleries that are owned by Diageo, it doesn't look the same way as it looks at places like Rossi or something like that, where they're leaning into different really unique kinds of oak for their cask management. They're leaning into like old different varieties of barley that have been obsolete that they're bringing back.
Right.
They might be leaning into like alternative yeast strains or alternative fermentations. Like that's much more kind of American style innovation.
Right.
And I think put into a Scotch format, it can be really exciting. But when you start to see distilleries in Scotland pivot from making paint to making pigments, as far as what they're putting into their warehouse, I think that's where it starts to get super interesting. So what does that mean? Often distilleries, when they're hamstrung by the malt whiskey production needs of ownership, they're producing one thing, one color, one paint all the time. That's what they're making. They're loading it into their warehouses. They're loading it into their casks. The differences can be differences between casks, differences in proof levels, differences in blending, bottling, but they're making one color of paint. Once they can start to pivot and put a little bit more slack in their production schedule, then they can start to make different pigments instead of paint.
Right.
Right. So they can put
Then
different
they
colors,
have-
different peating levels,
Right.
right? Like all different fermentation times, sometimes different yeast strains. And then you start to have more opportunities in the warehouse to put together different pigments to create a whole
Yeah, then it's a
palette of
blender's
colors.
paradise.
Exactly.
If you want to go that route, you can still do one-off single malts, but you could also start blending them together
Yes.
because it's still a single malt, one distillery, right?
Yes.
So don't get confused. It can, they can start doing a blender's paradise where they actually put together different variations on their whiskey.
Yeah. Yep. So the Glen Grant that we're trying here is it's owned by Pernod Ricard, so it's owned by Chivas. So it's part of the Chivas blends. But Glen Grant by itself is I always get a lot of
Why am I thinking is it Glen Grant is owned by
Is it Chivas?
No, isn't it? It's no, it's not. It's Campari.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I'm sorry. I was
Oh, no, you're throwing me off. I'm like, am I wrong? That's just oh my God. Last time I visited there,
I was thinking of Miltonduff. Sorry. But
I was like Chow and Bella and stuff. I was speaking in Italian. I went to the whole wrong thing.
But for me, from a distillation standpoint, the interesting thing about Glen Grant is they were the first distillery to put in spirit purifiers, which is essentially a forced reflux box collar that goes around the top of the spirit still, so they can pump cold water around the top of the still to force reflux before it flows out into the line arm, which the salespeople and the marketing people behind it will tell you that allows them to produce fruity, elegant spirit. The reality is it allows them to run the stills really fast without letting out the higher molecular weight compounds, so they can preserve the light weight of the distillate without impacting their ability to run it really fast.
Or running taller stills.
Yes, right. And exactly. And a taller still is essentially the same thing.
Right. They're making a taller still by doing this,
having a tall still or having a pre-condenser or running it slowly are all the net same effect on the distillate, right? It increases the reflux and the cooling.
What I want to know, and it still shows up in here, and this is what we talk about distillery character.
Yes.
I don't know what it is. It's at the apple and pear trees on property that makes me always think of apple and
Yeah,
pears
leading
when I
the
taste
witness,
like leading the witness.
yeah.
And
I
it's
totally
that,
agree. I totally
but
agree.
it's there. I mean, no matter how many
Yeah.
times I try to avoid it, it's sitting.
It is.
It's an orchard.
Yep, it is.
It's
So
an
it's like
orchard.
the like the fruit cocktail, like the Bartlett pear
Yeah.
syrup. I get a little bit of like lemon and lime zest on this too.
What do you guys think? Is it good?
This is 43.
Yeah, it is all the discovery. I think is 43, right?
Yes.
Is that how it works?
Yep.
Yeah, 43. So 86.
Yep. And this is like a
I can do math.
for now.
For now.
For now.
When does it get to the sixth one? Yes, Rick?
Correct.
Normal distillate from Glen Grant and then putting in your own barrels.
Yes. Yep.
So, somebody's been trashing
Yes.
the Glen for those online has been trashing the Glen Grant distillate.
Easy for you to say.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. A couple things about that. One is when you get into the very large vatting sizes that you would have for OBs from a distillery of that size, you end up getting a much more lower common denominator product, right? So if you're trying to really produce something excellent and really have the excellent cask and have it be really optimum, the batch sizes that Gordon MacPhail is doing in their bottling hall are probably like 20 to 25 casks at a time. So
where Glen Grant's are much bigger.
yeah, you're talking hundreds and hundreds. So it allows them to really optimize for the character of the distillate. And the other thing that is important to remember here is who has been maturing Glen Grant longer to be single malt? Glen Grant or Gordon MacPhail?
Well, I happen to know because I have a 14-year-old Glen Grant, and I know that didn't come from Glen Grant.
Yeah. So as far as like where the clinical expertise in matching Glen Grant distillate to cask to make the most Glen Grant of all of the Glen Grants, it's
easy for you to say.
It's with Gordon MacPhail. It's with Gordon MacPhail. So they ought to be better. They've been practicing longer. That's
Good
my
point.
Yeah.
Good point.
Next.
Oh, should we do number 2?
Let's on to number 2.
On to number 2.
So this is the kind of the a nice comparison. So two Speyside unpeated single malts, one matured in sherry and one matured in bourbon. So this is the kind of the discovery part of the discovery series. So Miltonduff, I misspoke earlier. Miltonduff is owned by Chivas.
That's Chivas, yeah.
And Miltonduff, this Miltonduff is unpeated. They used to produce peated distillate there under the name Mostowi. That went to Hiram Walker.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So that all the Mostowi distillate went to Hiram Walker, and that went predominantly into the Ballantine's blend.
Okay.
But the unpeated Miltonduff from Miltonduff predominantly went into the Chivas blends.
No, so and this is sherry.
Yes. Yep. So this is matured in Oloroso sherry from the Williams and Humbert bodega in Jerez in Spain. And that's a bodega that the Urquhart family and Gordon MacPhail has been working with for a long, long time. That's where they get most of their sherry casks.
You get this really nice sweetness on the finish on this, but before that, you get this. I always equate it to a fresh white mushroom.
Yeah.
Taste like in the front on the mid palate on this. It's really, really good.
I get a little bit of like green walnut too.
I'm allergic to nuts, so I probably missed that one.
I'm not going to make any joke about that.
No, I have to like different. I know where you are going, you sick bastard. But anyways, there's
I just want credit.
There's certain things that you got it. Oh my God, that was so funny. I just did it in my head.
Yeah.
But no, there's certain things that I actually have to work around
Sure.
because I'm allergic to nuts, and there's certain I have to find other flavor profiles that are similar.
Oh yeah. Right. So yeah.
So I don't
Take my word for it, Ryan. It tastes a little bit like green walnuts.
I'll take it from a nut.
One nut to another.
That's really good. I like that. That's right down my
yeah. And
I like that.
And sometimes
the flavor components of that. That's the thinking person's whiskey right there.
It is, and Miltonduff tends to be on the kind of on the malty, waxy, heavy side as
Mhm.
far as the body of the distillate. So it's a nice, can stand up to the sherry. Oftentimes, if you had a lighter bodied distillate, like for instance, Glen Grant, sometimes you put something like that in ex sherry, especially in Oloroso, and you really just get a lot of kind of wet tobacco and raisins, and almost like a dank, like forest floor kind of thing that's happening.
But sometimes
And
I think
then
a
you
lot.
start to take over with the sweetness.
Well, that's
too.
what I'm saying. But I
Yeah.
think a lot of times when you got to be awful careful about finishes,
Yes.
especially what you're doing them with, because all of a sudden you lose the distillate character too.
Yes. Yep.
Distillate character in Scotch is more, I think, almost more important than we sort of see with
I
American
agree.
whiskey.
I agree. And Gordon MacPhail prides himself in being able to balance the distillate character with the cask influence. And I think that's seen in great relief in a lot of their older whiskeys.
Mhm.
Those of us in the industry that have had the opportunity to try very old whiskeys from many different suppliers. I think if you push came to shove and you twisted our arm behind our back, we'd say some of them are just taste like pencils and acorns.
Mhm.
Right? Can be very over extracted.
I don't know what pencils taste like, but yeah, sure,
And you
I'll
don't-
go with you.
And
No,
you
I'm just
don't
teasing.
and you don't get a lot of distillate character
Right.
in those overaged whiskeys. Whereas I have to say that there's been so many opportunities for me to try very old Gordon MacPhail stuff, and you always get the Glen Grants taste like Glen Grants, the Mortlocks taste like Mortlocks, the Strathylas still taste like Strathylas, and I think that's the genius of the expertise that they've cultivated now over 4 generations. It's
Well,
really
and the
remarkable.
problem is, well, not the problem is, but what Gordon MacPhail has over a lot of other people is time.
Yes, yeah, they've had a lot
It's
more
time.
bets. It's true.
It's like, that doesn't work, dummy. Don't do that again. And but that happened in 18 something.
Yeah, and
Not like 2020.
and contrary to a lot of other industry organizations, they take really good notes at Gordon MacPhail on their practices over the years.
Yeah.
So,
You guys ready for the next one? Well, first of all, what'd you think of that one? You like that? It's big, bigger whiskey, a lot of flavors going on in there.
so I think it's a nice walk up to number 3, which is the Benromach 10. And as you guys know, who have seen me before, I can pour any whiskeys I want from the portfolio as long as I pour Gordon MacPhail's Benromach 10. Right? That's
the criteria.
Yep. You can have any color you want as long as it's Benromach 10.
I was fortunate enough that I've gotten to visit this distillery pretty much like not too long after they bought it.
Yeah. So Benromach is the first distillery that Gordon MacPhail purchased. Benromach's been around since 1898. It's been opened and closed by many different companies over the years. It was last closed by Diageo in 1983. And it lay dormant for 10 years until Gordon MacPhail purchased it in 1993. They spent 5 years essentially totally refurbishing it. They kind of gutted the whole thing. They came back online in 1998, and they have been really producing very kind of old school Speyside whiskey since then. And they're in a unique position to be able to claim that they're making old school Speyside whiskey because they were the ones that were maturing old school Speyside whiskey back when that was old school.
When it was new.
When it was new school, right?
Right.
Exactly. So this is
how long you been old school? Since it was new school.
Yes. So this is lightly peated. So we've had increasing level of muscularity in these first 3 whiskeys, all Speyside whiskeys, and now we're just getting the first kind of inklings of peat here. And the peat that's used in the Benromach whiskeys actually comes from bogs near Tomintoul, which is in the Cairngorm National Park. Those peat bogs, while they are predominantly sphagnum moss, like most of the peat bogs around Scotland, they don't contain any salt-driven vegetation because they're away from the coast. And what that means is that when that peat gets burned, it doesn't produce the same phenol profile that's produced when peat from specifically
no band-aids and ashtrays.
Yeah, specifically from the southwest of Scotland is burned. You get much more of that kind of coal tar phenolic flavor profile. Yeah, the kind of old sweaters and rubber boots.
But this is the very finish on this. There's like a flash of like campfire.
Yeah, and I think
It's a
that
campfire.
yeah, and I think
It's
if
not.
you're
It's
trying to
not.
define what the
Yeah.
smoke is, I think it is. It's a lot more cedar shingle, campfire, bonfire, wood
Yeah.
smoke, kind of clean. It's not as
Mhm.
ashy. It's not as iodiney as Kalila, and we're gonna have a lovely Kalila as well. And I think
Not that
that
there's anything wrong with that. It's just different.
but it also, I think it makes it easier from a flavor profile standpoint. I think it makes it a little bit easier to integrate into the profile of the whiskey. So this is like the Miltonduff, this is a medium plus level body distillate.
These are
And
shorter stills.
yeah, yep, they're
The
shorter
shorter
stills.
stills get a little bit more viscosity side of to them.
Well, yeah, yeah,
Oiliness.
because you're gonna during the boil, you're gonna force more of the heavier weight compounds in the vapor mixture out of the line arm before it has an opportunity to condense back into a liquid and go back into the boil.
Okay.
So what that means is that you have a rich, bold distillate that has some peat and smoke behind it. And what kind of cask are you going to match that with? You're going to match it with first fill cask only, right? So you need something that can stand up to the weight and body and punchiness
So they're using
of that
bourbon.
distillate. So this is a mixture of first fill bourbon and first fill sherry.
Okay.
This is probably for the 10-year-old, it's like usually 60-40, 60% bourbon, 40% sherry. So it's very kind of I think it's a really subtle blend.
Subtle.
I think if you're looking for the sherry components,
Yeah.
I think
You
you
have to
can
look.
find that kind of dried fruit stuff, but it doesn't have the same kind of dominant sherry profile that we saw in the Miltonduff. And if you're looking for the kind of the vanilla, spice, lemon, lime, tropical stuff, I think there is like a nice kind of orange marmalade thing happening in there, which is reminiscent of some of the citrus elements that we see in the Glen Grant and is really ties right back to the ex-bourbon casks.
Really nice.
So this is, I think it's a super versatile whiskey for all of those reasons, because if you like peat and you like smoke, it's got a little bit in there for you. If you don't like peat and you don't like smoke, it doesn't have too much. Right. So this is the
Salt on the
right.
steak.
Exactly. And then if you're looking for some of that sherry quality, there's a little bit in there. If you're looking for the character of the distillate to not be masked by too much influence from the cask, then this is the perfect whiskey for you. I think if you like some of the maritime whiskeys that have a subtler maritime expression, like Talisker, for instance, I think this would be a great whiskey for folks that like Talisker. If you're looking for
At a
something
nice price too.
at a nice price too, and if you're somebody that really likes Springbank, I think is another great. For instance, you're looking for something that has that oiliness and that meatiness and that body to it and that little bit of that savory element, then I think Benromach is a nice whiskey for somebody like that as well. I think those would be really great verticals to do for the
Well, let's ask them. What do you guys think? Like this one? Too much peat? Too much smoke? No. I get some people that not really crazy about smoke in the audience. So what do you people think that don't really like peaty whiskeys? Are you cool with this one?
Only answer if you like it.
Sir, stop leading the witness. Do you like this one though? Good. That's different, right? I like it.
Yeah.
Just enough. Just enough. Right. Not overdoing it.
The next one that we're going to try is the part of the Contrast series from Benromach, which is a series of whiskeys that they release. Usually we'll have two or three, sometimes four available in the U.S. at any given time. Right now, this is the only one that we have. This is the double matured. So this is matured in first fill bourbon, and then it's matured for, I believe, for 5 years in Bordeaux casks, red wine casks.
Okay.
This is also everything's been at 43%. This one's at 46% now. We're walking
Say that again.
walking it up.
What is it?
43. This one's at 46.
46.
46%.
So magic number.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So this is the same distillate, but just a different casking regimen. The peat's more restrained because I think it fights against the red fruit from the wine cask.
Yeah. Now you're getting the wine cask is now a factor, a dominant factor.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which now you're hoping that they play well together. When's it 12? This is a 12.
That's another great question. So this was 12 years old. You're going to get some degradation of the peat, of the phenols in the whiskey over those additional 2 years of maturation. Thank
I
you.
don't think- I
Just
don't-
like we rehearsed. That was
It's
perfect.
very good, very good, very good leading. But you know, and a lot of people don't understand that is as peat, no matter what type of peat it is in a barrel over a period of time, there are changes that occur just as with the distillate, just as with anything else.
Yeah.
The way the peat shows changes also.
This
It becomes a less that sweet. I like to call it like sweet peat.
Yeah.
It starts going a little bit more earthy.
Yep.
Sort of flavors to it.
What do you guys think of this? Really cool. Really cool.
Much better, somebody said. Much better than
Well,
the one I had before.
I don't want to break the news, but the more whiskeys you have, the better they taste.
That's right.
You know, is what it is.
And right until the point where you pass out.
Well, it's darkest right before it goes totally black.
Mm-hmm. That's really nice. That's got some. That's we were talking about before about being able to like delve into something.
And it has a little bit for me.
Definitely.
For me, at least, it has a little bit of sulfur, but not in a bad way. I think it fits.
Mhm.
You can get that a little bit of like that's kind of struck match thing. It also has a little bit of like camphor, menthol, kind of like
It's not on.
right and kind of light on the tongue.
Yeah, it's not.
Minty.
It's not minty. It doesn't go to chloroform. No.
Does it smell
No,
like chloroform? to you?
chloroseptic is what I was going for. But does this? Hey, does this smell like chloroform?
Yeah.
Just a little bit
Yep.
of smoke and finish. Yeah,
Yep.
nice. I really like that one.
That's cool.
Yeah, very good.
Shall we? Let's move to the Kalila. And normally I wouldn't put Kalila before the end, but I do want to do these back to back because this Kalila is at 45%. So this is at 46. This is at 45. So that's kind of close. And this is also a wine finish. So I think it's a nice one to do next to each other.
The color on them,
But we'll have
beautiful.
to all shake our heads like etch a sketches before we go to the
Go on the next
at
one.
end,
Yeah,
just to get-
everybody's got water.
Yeah.
They'll
You guys are professionals.
douse yourself. The color on this one is beautiful.
That's gorgeous. So this is
So like a lot of people don't understand, like, because we haven't had any for so long and it's been difficult to get, is Kalila itself.
Yeah.
It's one of the biggest producing distilleries on Isla.
So
Right?
this is 3 years, or excuse me, this is, like I said, this is 5 years. This is 3 years in Hermitage. So 5 years in Bordeaux, 3 years in Hermitage. Yes, this is at 45.
Mm.
The
If
integration.
you told me this was 80
integration-
proof, I'd be like, yeah, sure.
The integration
I wouldn't even
of
argue with you.
the red fruit and
Yeah.
the peat together is really, really, sometimes you get peat and red fruit together. It's like two cats in a pillowcase, but this is like really, this works. I like this.
Yeah, it's very harmonious
Yeah.
integration.
And refreshing to get a little
Yeah.
bit of Kalila. So talk to me as from your standpoint as a leader, a retail leader. How do you feel about, the shortages of Kalila? Is it bullshit? Is it being manipulated? What's the deal?
All right. So
Tell us how
I
you
could
really.
totally be wrong. Ask my wife. I've been wrong before. But I know that there's some international stuff at play.
Like a cabal?
A cabal. No, they're trying, like, I know Diageo would like to be able to get rid of tariffs and be able to go into India.
Mhm.
And I think they're poising themselves to do so. And I think Kalila is going to be one of the big ones that they're doing. They're going to flood the Indian market with it.
Wow. Get ready, Indian subcontinent.
Yeah. And I think that somehow ingrained in it. Now somebody's going to call and say, like, you're an idiot. But that's sort of my
And
feeling
like,
of what
you're not wrong, but still,
you're
made
in
my
it.
point.
But I think there's several things that has something to do with it. Of course, we've seen it. We're still seeing the impacts of COVID as for the supply chain.
Yes.
But at this point, it doesn't seem I'm not having a problem getting anything else. Kalila is not in a really special bottle that it's like a custom glass. It is a custom glass.
Yeah.
but
Right.
use it for other things. So I'm not feeling like that's the problem.
Yeah.
I don't think that it's been depleted. I don't think the stocks have been depleted. So I know there's been a reduction in production at the distillery,
But
but
that's
not
recent,
in,
and that should be affecting current
yeah,
stock.
but not enough to
I
sort of.
think there's going to be a price change when it comes back, right?
Do you think so?
Yeah, I do.
I think it's just going to.
I think they're trying to starve us so that they can force feed us.
Okay, so here's the problem right now, though, is I've seen other people do silly price increases. They're just silly. I'm sorry if you're one of these guys. I apologize, but I'm going to stick to it. You're silly because guess what? The economy is not where it needs to be, especially for luxury goods.
Or people with kids in college.
People with kids, people with just lots of kids. Groceries, everything has gone up. Fees have gone up. Taxes have gone up. Price of groceries have gone up. This is a time right now. It's actually just as, other than maybe a tip, it's just as the same price to eat out as it is to eat in. Right. Yeah. So it's at a time where a bottle of scotch could be the value and could actually increase consumption. And the only thing that could stop that would be to increase the price to the point where no one could buy it. And so I think that I'm talking to other suppliers, let's say on the American side, and I'm telling them they're coming out with products that the closer you can get to $50, the better. I'm not saying your bottle has to be $50 a bottle, but if you can get to 60, if you can get to 70, as soon as you pop over 80, there better be a damn good reason that you're there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So
it's the same thing with anything else. There's a price point, and then there's a point where you're pricing yourself out of play. And now Kalila can certainly do that, and they can starve us and say, okay, this and this and this. But if you start looking at other products that are coming from Isla, they have the same peat level, and they have all of that same thing, don't increase or pull back and say, okay, we're reducing our stuff, or we're going to change the way we do something because we're charging you more. We're going to give you more ABV. We're going to give you this. We're going to give you more time in maturation. We're going to give you this. All of a sudden, Kalila doesn't look like
it's not as attractive as a proposition for the consumer.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. The flavor is always going to be there. I'm a Kalila fan. You won't get me arguing with me on that, but
good news is a lot of the indies have Kalila available.
That's true. I mean, I actually have a barrel of Kalila right now that we purchased that's an 11-year-old. It's $89.99 cask strength.
Wow.
It's a good deal.
It's a great deal.
So, and it's classic Kalila. It's a first fill bourbon Kalila.
Nice. That's awesome.
So, I mean, that's where you're going to start looking at other people that won't get as silly about this stuff. And I think that sort of offsets what Diageo is trying to do, because all they're doing is making people go to independent bottlers of Kalila to get Kalila.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
So you make them more attractive. You're making them more attractive because they've always been a little bit more expensive. This is like I'm going to use one more analogy. This is like my wife going to the farm to get fruits and vegetables in the summer. It was always more expensive to do so, but it's fine. The vegetables are fresher. Everything's coming in. They actually last longer. They taste better. They're all this stuff. So you paid a little bit more money. Right now, the way that the farmers figure out what they're going to charge, they're actually now cheaper than the local grocery store for the better, longer lasting, better tasting product. Until they smarten up, now you're getting people going, okay, you know what? This is a better deal. Maybe the independent bottle is a better deal.
Could be.
They were always a little bit more expensive, but now they may be a little bit cheaper.
And
you're getting
with Gordon
quality.
MacPhail, you get more expertise.
And you're getting quality. Right. So it's a risk.
It is. Does that resonate?
I'm still thinking to my Indian thing, though. I still think the India thing has got something to do.
It's a nice conspiracy. I love a good.
Do you like it?
Oh,
yeah, I do too.
Get past the
I didn't even get to the foil helmets or anything like that, which is great.
The night is young.
The night is young. Wait. Oh, wait a minute. We have more whiskey.
So, yeah.
This is really nice. I like this a lot, though. And this is not typical Kalila, though.
No, it's not.
Distillery characteristic still there. Flavor, it's still there. But
Yeah.
this is another
This is-
another beast.
Yeah, this is special. So the wine finishes from G&M are special. I think people that have seen them over the years know that when you see a wine finish from G&M come out, buy 3, hide one from yourself, give one to a friend, drink one immediately. That's the move.
I didn't know that was the strategy. I've been doing this all wrong. Mine was drink, drink, and drink, and then so that doesn't work. Damn, that's why I don't have any left. All right,
Or
good.
friends.
No friends. That's good. Well, I don't need friends if I have whiskey.
Yeah. Khalil, you're my only friend
You
now.
know, Khalil understands me. Go away.
Yeah. Yeah. So some of the other stuff, some of the other Kalila from Gordon MacPhail, there is a Kalila in the Discovery series as well.
Yeah, it's good too.
Which is fantastic. I think it's a 13-year-old,
Mhm.
and it's in bourbon. It's really nice. There are also tranches of Kalila cast strength single casts that come in and out. And usually, what I try to do is alternate them so that we get one that's matured in sherry, run through that, and then we'll get one that's matured in bourbon, run through that, go back and forth. Yeah.
What's the difference?
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
so
So
the philosophy between like the Discovery and the Connoisseurs,
Yep.
and there's actually one more, right? And then one more.
yeah,
Series.
then there's the Connoisseurs Upper, then there's the Private Collection,
Yeah.
and then there's the Lost Dinosaurs Collection.
I heard that one got hit by a meteor. Is that true?
Yeah. So the Discovery series are entry level. From a price standpoint, they're probably the most accessible, and they're really to
The
highlight.
accessible level.
Yeah, they're really to highlight the influence of cask on distillate, right? So they're really kind of showcasing that. So you can discover cask influence. That's the discovery part. The Benromach is separate, so we'll kind of leave that alone. The red box, these are the wine finishes, which used to be the old Private Collection. Used to come in that really shitty white cardboard.
You can say that now because they got away with it.
They updated it. So those are in these kind of maroon boxes. The other stuff in the Connoisseur's Choice range in the gray box is now almost all single cast strength offerings. So they've really consolidated the different tiers and hierarchies in the portfolio, which were manifold over the years, and really pushed everything into the Connoisseur's Choice range. In the Connoisseur's Choice range, when you get above 30 years, that's the Connoisseur's Choice Upper range, which comes in a squat bottle and usually comes in a wooden box. Above the Connoisseur's Choice Upper range, then you get into the new Private Collection, which is stuff that's usually 40
Don't
years.
even concern yourself
40,
with that
40
stuff.
years or older. 40 years or older.
You're gonna take out a loan. You can't even look at that. You got kids going to
I'm not
college.
allowed
Neither
to
can
think about
I.
it, yeah.
Let's forget that.
Yeah. However, if you or somebody you know, or a rich benefactor, or a local philanthropist is interested in purchasing bottles that are that old, I would encourage you to look in the Gordon MacPhail portfolio for those, because I think you'll find some of the best value. Like if you are driven to,
Oh yeah, it's not.
Yeah,
it's,
if you're
it's
driven to buy
crazy, but it's
something
not
that's-
super crazy.
yeah. So if you're driven to buy something that's 50 years or older, or a vintage date from before 1980, I think you're going to get the best value for your dollar in the Gordon MacPhail portfolio.
Yeah.
Just compared to the rest of the industry right now. So they have some really fantastic offerings there.
they
If
do.
anybody's interested, you can ask Ryan. Then
Yeah,
Ryan
we can get
tap me on the
right.
shoulder, and I'll feed him the information. You'll get it from him. So.
It's less crazy than super crazy.
Yep.
But I mean, they're up there.
Yeah. So if you want,
But I always love people that walk
for
in. Like,
Port
this
Ellen
is
or
this
Lockside
is,
or something
right.
from old distilleries too.
This is the part about being a retailer. If somebody comes in and goes, "Hey, my buddy's having his 50th birthday. I want to get him something really nice." Well, what would you like to get him? He goes, "I'd like to get him a 50-year-old Scotch." And I go, "Really?" And I go, "Well, what do you think? What are you thinking in the price?" He goes, "I don't know, $100, $200." I go, "Uh-huh. Let's do 5 10-year-olds and put them in a pack and give it to them." Might be a little bit more up the alley, but people have no idea. Like, time is money. And when you start getting into older things and you get to the point where it's so old that we are just making it, it's always 80 proof because we're just making it so it can be still called whiskey, and they lose so much ABV.
And eventually they become priceless because there's no comparatives.
Right.
So you want frozen dinosaur meat?
There it is.
It's going to cost you.
It's going to cost you.
It's been in the freezer a long time.
I have some of that stuff in my freezer. I can just tell you it's that, but that's what it is. And it is true. They are, when you start getting up into that range, it is more reasonable coming from the Gordon MacPhail line. There are some stuff in there. There's some values still in there,
And I would say
but
that
it's
the
still,
quality is really
it's
high too.
still,
It is, the
if
air
not
is
for
very
us
thin.
peasants,
Yeah,
yes,
the air is very
yeah, us
thin.
peasants, it's
Yeah.
not, but it is. But if you had to, you could,
Yeah.
right?
So
Number 6.
number 6. So this is Tomintoul. This is a 21-year-old Tomintoul.
Tomintoul. Now we don't see a lot of Tomintoul in the U.S.
Yes. So Tomintoul is owned.
I have seen some.
Yeah. So
but
Tomintoul is owned by Angus Dundee.
Yep.
Who also owns? Does anybody know the other distillery that Angus Dundee owns?
I
Glen
do.
Cadam.
Is it really?
Yeah, that's the other distillery they own. So Tomintoul is a fairly new distillery. It was built in 1965 in the Cairngorms, and it was White and Mackay for a long time, and then it was bought by Angus Dundee eventually.
Nice.
They produce a ton of distillate. They are, what was the blend that they? My note says don't know the blend looks like a prison. So this distillery looks like a prison. It's very boxy and kind of ugly looking. They don't have a visitor center.
And somebody showed us. I've seen pictures of it. You are correct.
Yeah, it's like
It's very forgettable. Or
my
like
kid built it out of Legos.
Yeah.
This is a refill American hogshead. So this is 54.2% ABV. It's 21 years old. Vintage date 2001. The ChatGPT tasting notes read as follows, and I quote: apple and lemon peel aromas give way to crystallized violets.
I just had some crystallized violets
Yeah.
last night.
Oh, me too. Sweet passion fruit flavors combined with
I get that.
honeycomb and blood orange zest. Long finish with lingering spice and oak. You have to have lingering at least 3 words away from the word.
It's sexy, damn sexy when you say lingering. This is really good. Other than the crystallized violets, I pretty much tasted all of that stuff in there.
This has.
Do you? Sure, you get crystallized violets in that for days. For days.
So
Lisa's wife is like, sure you do. When did you get crystallized violets? Never seen you had any. You make crystallized violets? Carol's making crystallized violets for all of us so we can try some. Thank you, Carol.
Bravo.
You can thank Lisa. She just volunteered you. Thank you, Lisa. There'll be a fight at home now. I know now.
So I do get the florality. I don't know if I can identify it as crystallized violets. I do get a little bit of that honeycomb, and
there is definitely that.
I get a little bit of flash of like balsamic kind of thing happening in it too. It's like a little bit of like brightness and acidity to it.
Light caraway.
I'm down with that.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
I get ginger too.
Ginger.
Yeah.
That's
just
pretty.
Before the finish.
It's also, I think,
it's really beautiful whiskey.
And for 21 years old, it's definitely lively.
Yeah.
Right. It's
sometimes they get sort of flabby.
Yeah.
You know.
Don't talk to me that way.
I know. It's really good.
Kavork, what do you think? Bueno?
Awesome. It doesn't
suck.
That's a New England.
That's a huge relief.
That's a New England compliment.
Yeah.
It doesn't suck.
Yeah.
You know what that is? That doesn't suck. That's a compliment.
That's wonderful.
That's right up there with not bad.
Yeah.
Well, okay. That is really nice. And that's got some flavors in it that don't that's
unusual.
Yeah.
But
in a good way.
Avant-garde.
Yeah. I've had some avant-garde whiskeys. I can do without those. Yeah. No, but it really has a really.
It's like disappointment.
Yes.
Yeah. No, that's one.
Tastes like last night. Disappointment. Really nice. I like that one too. Got a great nose too.
So, Kavork, do we have extra credit whiskeys too?
We have extra credit whiskeys. Nick brought this one in, right, Nick? This is yours, right? This is our barrel. Let me see. Can I see the bottle?
Oh, this is the first fill bourbon.
So this is 1999, 15 years, in oak cask.
Oh,
this was ours, right? Yeah.
This one was like
we bought this whole barrel. We bought this whole barrel. That was ours.
Yeah, first fill bourbon.
Yep. I'm a sucker for Mortlock. The only way, like, if it's done well, like, I don't know. I'm just like, I will at least buy a bottle or try a bottle. If you tell me it's Mortlock, I will blindly buy a bottle of it. I was disappointed. Like the newer stuff that's coming out from Diageo, is spot on. The first round that they did, that they said we're going to relaunch Mortlock, and then they relaunched, and I go, the hell'd you do? You ruined it. Stop ruining it. And then they came out with the second time they relaunched it again. And then it was okay. Now you're talking. The 16 was great and stuff like that.
This is like porky and hammy, and it's got a little bit of vanilla in it too.
Yeah, I can pick those up too.
Yeah, sure.
This is what's the year on that? This is 1999.
1999. Yeah, and this is 58.6% ABV. So, oh man,
shut your mouth. How much is it? 7,500 pounds for which one? The 63. It's older than me. 61, still older than me. That's really good.
And then Kavork, what's the other one going around? Is that the Linkwood?
This Mortlock, this is why I like Mortlock. I mean, this is
lovable.
like,
I haven't had that whiskey in a long time.
Now I like Mortlock and sherry is a lot of like my favorite.
Yep.
But even when I tried
another malt that really can stand up to the impact of the sherry.
Yeah.
Fight for itself.
Well, you described it so aptly. It's like meat.
Yes.
Mortlock is meat. I mean, it's just it's like broad shoulder meat. It's just and get those flavors to it. What's that? Yes.
Yes.
Not tofu.
No.
It is not tofu for our vegetarian members in the audience. It is not tofu.
It's not impossible meat either.
Yes.
So the Linkwood that's going around is 1995 vintage.
Goes on that. Gee.
It's 27 years old.
27 years old.
54.5% ABV. And that's in sherry. That's first fill sherry.
I can smell that on the nose. Wow.
Yeah. So this is to be available.
Oh, this is not available yet. So you guys are trying something that is not in the U.S.
No, it is.
Right?
It is in the U.S. It's just not in the store yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yes.
But is it at the wholesale?
It is. Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
All right. Let me know if you want some. David, our salesman series already looked it up. Right, Dave?
There is
inventory.
That's the spirit,
That's
Dave.
the spirit of Dave. Gonna get a good commission on this one.
Yeah.
This could be a good night, David says.
Wow. That's so good. There's almost nothing you can say about that.
That's really good.
Yeah.
It's got a finish on a finish. It's like a double. It's really weird. It's got like a double finish. Just when you think it's done, there's another flavor that pops up.
It just unwinds, right? It comes in, it's so tight, and then it unwinds in the palate. It has so much body and so much like a blackberry reduction.
This is like this is probably the most weightiest Linkwood I've ever had.
Yeah. This one, when I first tried this one, it kind of stopped me on my tracks. I made sure to bring ample inventory into Massachusetts as best I was able. I had to sneak it by the goalie over at Martinetti, though.
Can somebody explain to me why we have 100 cases of this Linkwood?
Like, I don't know. Yep. Oops.
What was the ABV on this one?
54.5.
Wow. That's a good whiskey.
That's a great one. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really, really nice.
You see why I wanted to share this one with you?
Yeah.
Guys.
You all got to try this one tonight. This was not on the list, and I don't know how he got permission to taste it, but he did. And we don't care what type of trouble he gets in afterwards.
That's right.
We got to try the whiskey.
Wonderful. Ryan, do you want to go over any of the?
Yeah, we're going to go through a bunch of stuff. First of all,
I
want to, you guys all stay here. First of all, I want to thank you, Joe.
It's great to be here, guys.
This is why you get invited back. What we just tasted tonight is why Joe always has a place at Julio's.
My pleasure. Good to see everybody.
Hey, everybody on Facebook. And if you want to watch this, you can go back on Julio's Liquor's Facebook page. It'll be a Facebook Live, and you can watch it. It's a video. It's ongoing. It'll also become a podcast on It's the Liquor Talking, which you can get wherever you get your podcasts, such as Spotify and so forth. So Spotify has it, and just look for this logo. It's the Liquor Talking with the microphone in the glass. So thank you everybody for coming tonight. We really do appreciate it. You guys all stay here. We got some stuff to go over. You really should have been here, everybody. If you're watching this online, you should have been here. See you later. Bye.